welcome back to For the Love of Men podcast. My name is Courtney Shand, and I'm hosting with my dear friend Brianna Mosier.
Hi.
The intention of the show is to bring together men and women to create healthy, polarized relationship dynamics by learning how to honor each other's natural masculine and feminine energetic core. I'm excited to dive in today, but before we do that, I want to introduce those of you that are new to my friend Bri and myself, and then we will get to it.
Yes, I'm Bri. My work in the world is helping really driven, high-achieving women embrace their feminine energy, break relationship attraction patterns, and really call in healthy partners by being authentically who they are. Part of my background is in somatic healing as well as sex, love, and intimacy work. So I work with women a lot on pleasure and expanding and exploring their pleasure as well. Courtney,
Yes.
tell us about your work.
Yes, I am a trauma-informed dietitian and relationship mentor. I love helping women not only feel really empowered with what their body is telling them, kind of learning how to cue back into those signals, but also how to engage the people around you in your process so that you can flourish and really express more health and vibrance in your life. Mm-hmm. All right, so we have some really exciting follow-up from our last episode, which if you haven't listened to it already is on dating in the feminist era. It's here. It's not going away. We can either get on board and have a conversation and direct the ship together, or
You will fall off the ship. Just kidding. Kind of.
Or I don't know. I really don't know the or on that one. So we wanted to follow up on it because we've been getting some feedback that there have been some feelings about it, which is great. We want to have the conversation. That's why we started it. But if you're feeling some resistance to this topic and to the idea of releasing the allure of that wounded masculine perspective, we have some thoughts for you. Would you like to dive in first?
Take it away.
Perfect. So one of the things that when we think about letting go of this old paradigm, this kind of wounded masculine paradigm that keeps us in this power dynamic where either you're winning or I'm winning, it's kind of a one up, one down position that is not very empowering for either party, if we're honest, is that there has historically been a sexual chemistry that has been built on these roles of being one up or one down. And typically this is going to be wounded masculine, wounded feminine, and it can flip back and forth. It's not necessarily gender related, but we're talking about gender norms historically because I think that puts it in context of where we're coming from so that we can really steer the ship in a way that is in more integrity. So that being said, if you are feeling some resistance to it, it might be that we need to broaden our perspective of what is attractive, what creates chemistry, and what kind of chemistry we want to create. I mean, really, when I think about that dynamic, it is not. I can see why it would be very attractive, just historically what you have seen and what you have been conditioned to find sexually attractive or chemically attractive in other people and personalities. And the invitation, our intention with last time's episode is that it's always an invitation for men to join the conversation in a way that brings out the best of both of us so that we can create kind of this level playing field instead of it being this hierarchy of either you're winning or I'm winning, where it's coming from a very insecure place where you're playing on my wounds or I am having to play on your wounds in order to keep this dynamic. It's not terribly functional and not really fun, if we're honest.
True. And I think that inherently is shifting as you're learning to date in the feminist era, right? Because women are really coming out of their own wounded feminine energy. So now that dynamic isn't going to work. An empowered feminine woman is really not going to be as drawn to a wounded masculine man, to a man who's holding a lot of wounded masculine energy. And I want to say too, just for context and, my background being in sex, love, and intimacy work, that there are, as Courtney's saying, lots of flavors of attraction. One dynamic that a lot of people find really erotic and fun is the power dynamic when it's done consensually with awareness, right? So there's a world where you want to feel very much like submissive to your partner and your partner's dominant, and that can be awesome for both people. There's a world where you want to feel feminine and they want to feel masculine, and that's awesome for both people. There's nothing wrong with that as long as it's done with consent and awareness, right? And all parties are willing and, wanting that dynamic. But when we're thinking about dating at large, who you are attracted to does change as you start graduating into more empowered energy. And so right now, I think it's in some ways, women have kind of gone first, right? They're really graduating into this empowered feminine zone. And the intention of the last episode was to help the men who want to know how to love women really well and date in healthy ways, how to get on board with that and learn a different way to relate and be with women.
Yeah.
Make sense?
To open new ideas,
Mm-hmm.
to open new ways of creating a new dynamic versus what you've seen and what you are afraid of happening. You really are in charge. You can pick this third option of we don't have to go backwards to what we knew. We also don't have to move into this thing that I am afraid of that has kept me over here. We can create this third option that is very empowering for you and that gets to allow you to express yourself fully as well. There are parts of you that have probably been very shut down in that old dynamic too, that are getting to come online, and it can feel really unfamiliar, very wobbly, vulnerable, and historically those are not celebrated traits of masculine energy. If I can reframe that for you, it is the courage, the lion-heartedness, the valiant part of you that is coming online.
Bravery.
The brave part of you that is coming online. And that is where we are inviting men to step into those very masculine qualities with a new lens.
Well said.
Thank you.
I know, I'll just speak from my own experience too, that before I had done a lot of my own healing work and when I was really in my wounded feminine energy, the allure of the wounded masculine, as we started with, it was like my kryptonite. I'll just be honest. Like, that was really the one thing that I would feel addicted to, would be someone who comes in with big, big masculine. And that's kind of how wounded masculine comes off, is sort of like macho, kind of, you think they're taking the lead, but it's actually very controlling. You think they're decisive, but it's actually overbearing. It's coming from woundedness. When I was in my wounded feminine, I thought, oh, that feels sturdy. That feels like I don't have to make the decision.
I can lean in that.
Exactly. And I can lose myself in the allure of this person. The more that I really reflected on, because of course those relationships crashed and burned. They're dysfunctional dynamics because there is that power, and it always went back to power. It was always about power in those relationships. And after you experience it a few times, you start reflecting, which is now the work I help women with. Okay, why do I choose partners like this? What part of me is drawn to that when I know it ends up in me feeling hurt? Why do I keep choosing this type of person? As I unpacked that and stepped more into my empowered feminine, healed the codependency and learned how to speak up and learned how to take up space and be decisive on my own and trust myself, who I was attracted to changed. And it changed into, while yes, I could look at someone who's clearly, you can smell it from a mile away, can't you?
Yep.
Yeah. And wounded feminine too.
Yep.
And by the way, I see it in myself as well. When I'm in my wounded feminine, I know it. Like, I'm not fooling myself. But when I sense it, is there a feeling of like, oh, that's something I used to be attracted to? Of course. Followed very quickly by, I will not do that again. That is not the most self-loving thing I can do to engage in that dynamic. That would kick up wounds. That's my wounded parts being attracted to a person who's they're wounded, excuse me. Now it's a different dynamic. It's sturdiness, it's integrity, it's reliability. And you can also feel that from people when you meet them.
Yeah.
Right? This man has emotional intelligence. He's secure. He has providership energy. He respects women. Like, through a conversation, you notice that. And through that safety of knowing that being with that person is not going to dysregulate my nervous system, make me doubt myself, make me collapse, make me feel weak, right? This person's going to bring the best out of me. And because I've done that healing, that's what I'm actually drawn to. Right?
I love that. Familiarity doesn't always lead to comfort.
Mm-mm.
Sometimes it just leads to dysfunction.
Same old patterns.
The same old patterns.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that you brought that up because it's not that you don't acknowledge it, and even acknowledge it within yourself. And I did love that you brought up that point too, because you will find that as you're doing the healing, you're not 100% in your empowered energy. They're not 100% in their empowered energy either. We don't want to create this like
Black and white.
utopian idea that you're always in your empowered energy. When you're playing in the empowered paradigm, you just see it with clarity. You can still choose to operate in your wounded energy. You
Yes.
just see it and
Mm-hmm.
make the choice.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You
Mm-hmm.
can't like hide from it anymore, where before it was like the fish in water experience of like, oh, I don't realize that I'm doing it because it's just all around me. Um, that is for sure an experience. And I think that kind of instability, that being on the back foot, does create the illusion of tension
Mm-hmm.
that will feel similar in your body as sexual attraction. That pull, that like, I need you to stabilize me, is like OG. That's the first thing that I learned in masculine feminine dynamics, is the instability is what's creating that pull.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a true like connection point. It is actually, I feel unstable and you're the one that created it, and therefore you're who I'm putting my attention on. They call this, I think cathexis is the term, where you put your mental energy onto a person, and it is it is a feeling state that we like, that we have been told is a good feeling state. Not always the case, but I think that that's really an interesting thing, is who you're putting your mental energy and emotional energy onto is going to create a level of attraction.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I would say we probably need to broaden your scope of what attraction is. I love that you brought up that point of like, attraction can be, and it also, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, my words are coming
It's
too
okay.
fast from
We're
my mouth right
following the
now.
train.
Thank you. Thanks for the validation. I love
Mm-hmm.
that.
Mm-hmm.
Is that it doesn't actually have to be sexual attraction either. I think that's the one that we talk about most often in dating, because that's the context where sexuality is probably going to be the most um, active.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, that's the dynamic that you're going to be sexually active in. Um, as opposed to other relationships. But it doesn't necessarily even have to be about sexual attraction. Sexual attraction can be multiple different components.
Mm-hmm.
It can feel like safety. It can feel like being seen. It can feel like my radiance is coming online. All of those things are going to create a very similar experience of pull and magnetic quality to that person, as we would otherwise call sexual attraction. And I think it's kind of a language thing. The more language that you have to describe these different states, you may resonate with one of them more than another, and you've probably been lumping them all in together as like sexual attraction or chemistry, when really there's micro aspects that you can um, individually break down and get to the bottom of.
Yes. And people have different desires for what creates chemistry based on their history and background. So it's something I do in depth with clients actually when they're trying to reignite and explore their sexuality. Based on what you've been through your whole life forms these desires, these like core needs, these things that turn, and I won't dive into it all in here because actually it's coursework, right? Like I really keep it for my clients because it's profound, but have to keep some things. We love the podcast, but you gotta pull back some things. So, but there are certain desires and they vary between each person based on their experiences. So there is a multitude of ways that attraction can be created. I want to make this real for the men for just a minute. When we talk about, some of the feedback is like, oh, well, wounded masculine is very attractive, right? Which is true. Um, the same way that maybe you as a man have experienced attraction toward a woman who's more in her wounded feminine. So she's a little bit more like kind of go with the flow, damsel in distress, right? Very impressionable, naive energy. That is often sexualized in our culture. So that's important context. The pick me energy sometimes is very attractive. A lot of times, wounded feminine people who are in their wounded feminine have a boundaryless relationship to sex and a self-validation relationship to sex. Is that clear?
So glad you're going there. Yep.
Yeah. So she's open to it and receiving it, not from an expression of desire, but rather, I want to feel good enough. I want my wounds to be soothed. This is a balm for my wounds. So maybe you as a man have experienced attraction to that type of woman because there is a draw to all those elements depending on you and your background.
Mm-hmm.
The same way that when, a woman dates a man who has that big wounded masculine energy, like I talked to you about, there's an element of draw. Now think about it like this. Have you ever met an empowered feminine woman? You feel her probably from across the room. She is still sexy, attractive, sultry, but it's like contained, it's grounded. You know that you have to take time to get to know her, to help her open. You know that there's work involved in attaining and having conversation and dating someone like that, but you're into it because there's a part of you as a man that's like, I want to be with someone who holds herself in that queen energy and highest. Not everyone gets access to her, and I can tell. Not from a wounded place, from a very she knows her worth place, right? She's in her body. Maybe she takes really good care of herself. You can feel that from her, and there's a different kind of attraction to that type of woman, we would call the empowered feminine woman, than a woman who's more in her wounded feminine. Again, these are not permanent states. You can oscillate in and out of them, but for the most part, like Courtney was saying, when you play in the empowered paradigm, you're pretty much there most of the time. And then you have your triggers and moments, you know how to lead yourself through. So there's a different allure for women as well when we meet a man who's in his empowered masculine. Is it alluring, the big wounded masculine energy? Sometimes, sure. Sure. Depending on where you are. There's a version of Brie that would have liked that. There's now a version of Brie who would be like, no, 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 no. And a man who's in his empowered masculine is, like I said, right, going to feel sturdy, in integrity, grounded. He's going to be caring. He's going to be thinking about what would make me more comfortable. I can truly lean into him because I'm already feeling this innate, I can trust his judgment feeling. That is so magnetic to an empowered feminine woman because one of her priorities is to stay happy and peaceful and to feel regulated in her nervous system. So if a wounded masculine man were to approach her, she's going to actually feel that dysregulation in her body and trust her body and probably turn the other way 99% of the time, unless she's got like a wild hair and she's like, throw caution to the wind.
Right.
I'm going to indulge,
Right.
So hopefully that makes it real as you're listening.
I love that you went there because it is, I think this actually is a deeper conversation for another day, and probably your expertise will come online that day for sure. But the things that we have eroticized,
Yes,
the power dynamic has been eroticized. And I think that this conversation is asking to reflect on that, of the things that do create that tension for you, of if a queen energy woman needs safety to express herself in her most vulnerable, we'll say sexual, but in her most vulnerable way, if she requires safety as the entry to that experience, to try to negate that or try to rush that process is in some ways kind of a little bit scary.
It feels like the energy's coming at you and you're trying to do like this.
Yes.
I'm just not there yet.
Yes.
Not there. And I would actually be there faster if you could give me some space to,
yes,
and then come slowly,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So if the wounded masculine is the macho man that we have been putting on a pedestal, and the counterpart to him is the damsel in distress, I can't figure myself out, I need you, oh my gosh, you're the best thing ever. Both of them are validating each other. Case in point here. But if we can only get into that paradigm and stay in that paradigm, we are actually having fantasies about being in this power dynamic where there is a one up and one down. And it's very dysregulating because it creates fear, it creates anxiety in your body, and you're kind of maybe misinterpreting that cue, that physical cue, as something that needs to be soothed, and therefore sexual energy.
You're calling it chemistry.
You're calling it chemistry, you're calling it sexual energy, when really it's a call for a deeper reflection of needs that are not being correctly identified or addressed.
Mm,
Hate to just go there, but I do.
it's true.
Yeah.
It's not typically until you have had the experience 1 or 100 times of dating someone who makes you feel dysregulated that you start to let it click in. Oh, I should be paying more attention to how I feel. Like I was telling you earlier, right? Uh, I should be actually paying attention to what's happening in my nervous system. I will say what you're talking about, like masculine, feminine, the power dynamic, can be, like I said earlier, done in a really beautiful, consensual way, especially if you're together, you're committed. That can be so fun for you guys to play with. Hey, I want to be totally in my submissive feminine. I want you to be totally in your, empowered masculine and like take the lead. Great, amazing sexual experience for you. We just don't want that to be the thing that's leading you to choose long term partners when it's not done with that awareness. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yes. We don't want that done in the emotional realm.
Same way.
Um, that is fine
Mm.
in the bedroom if that's you both are consciously like, hey, I don't want to make decisions. I want to make all the decisions.
Yes.
Fine. That can be really a fun experience and very bonding to play in those realms. We don't want that to be the emotional connection point. And that's where I think when we are trying to apply sexual energy on top of what we need to have a clean emotional exchange is where things get a little bit squirrely. Um, because I don't want to have this one up, one down relationship emotionally. I don't want emotionally for you to be making all the decisions and me to be fully submissive. That is not a healthy adult to adult relationship. That is a parent child relationship at best. Because then that only gives you, when there's that much pressure and you feel completely powerless, whether you're the male or the female or whatever, you only have the option to be on top, to flip the script. And I think this is where a lot of men who may have resistance to the topic we've been talking about previously are having that resistance, because the experience you've had has been this flip of power dynamic, which makes you now in the one down position. And that feels really vulnerable because you don't have the skill set to navigate that. And it's usually coming from, again, a wounded masculine, wounded feminine space. You're just alternating your wounds together instead of coming and meeting eye to eye and saying, hey, I see you. I appreciate you. You're safe here with me. I want to see more of you because I really do care about you and want for you to thrive too. My thriving doesn't come at the expense of your thriving. That is where we're moving towards. That's what we are proposing. Say it. I feel you. You're
This
like,
is what I was going to say. That was masterful. That was art. I was watching it unfold and then it clicked in my head. Oh my gosh, she's going to talk. She really went there. I mean, you just said that. Chef's kiss. Hats off to Courtney. I couldn't agree more. I think that's the misinterpretation in general of feminism, is what you're saying. It's either I'm up and you're low, or we're high and you're low, right? And Courtney is saying we want this mutual, and I'm saying as well, we want this mutually beneficial relationship where no one's competing with each other. Women having more power does not threaten your power. That's the take home message. And what if power wasn't even the main concern? Especially in interpersonal relationships, if power is becoming the main concern, that gives pause, because something's off in the dynamic. I don't know that I've ever been seeking power in a relationship unless I was very deeply in my wounded. Then I was considering, do I have power here?
if you feel you have no power,
Then I'm thinking about it.
then you are thinking of ways to regain power.
And if you have all the power, you're trying to protect it.
You will hoard that commodity.
And when you're in a mutually beneficial relationship where power is equally divided and kind of ebbs and flows in different situations, right? Power is not even something on your radar as much because it's already balanced.
That also, I think there is a lot of, and in the like developmental, the like chakra system, power and sexuality are both in that second chakra. Your like ability to create and feel seen and experience everything.
Mm-hmm.
To say that both of you don't want that equally is silly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So if you're consistently doing this, you're just like flipping the table with each other. Neither one of you is going to be stable. It's not something we can maintain.
Mm-hmm.
And it may be really erotic to start with, but it is going to fizzle out quickly because it's exhausting.
Mm-hmm.
Emotionally exhausting. We do not want this in our emotional world.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you know what we always say is that one of the biggest turn-ons for women and the thing that's going to create space for the expression of her sexuality is safety. And you will get to a point, I'm willing to bet, if you're in a wounded masculine, wounded feminine dynamic, the safety is not there.
Mm.
It's not. And then that chemistry you felt initially in the beginning, especially if either of those people start to grow and heal in the dynamic, that it's not reliable. That's fickle, right? That's both of your wounds playing on each other. So you can then, what creates the chemistry is going to have to change at that point. And for women, safety is always going to be a requirement. It just is. I work with so many women in sex, love, and intimacy, unless it's consensual lack of safety, right? And that's getting into the kink world type of things. Like that's something that she's alchemizing and, has, it might be a little too edgy for our show, but there is an element where lack of safety can be a turn on, again, if it's done consensually. Generally speaking, to be able to even get to a place where a woman would consider that, she would have had to have so much safety with a man.
That.
Like
Mm-hmm.
there has to be an immense amount of trust.
Yes.
And I'm giving you the tip of the iceberg on this. So I realize I opened a can of worms, but it just felt important to say because I didn't want women listening who are turned on by lack of safety to judge themselves,
Sure.
because there really is an alchemy of wounding and a kink for a lot of people in that. But it has to be consensual, and typically it has to be preceded by an enormous amount of rapport and safety already with that person to even be brought up or explored.
Mm-hmm.
So safety, safety, safety. When you think of women, think, how can I make her feel safe? That is always going to help you win. How can I provide that sense of safety for her?
That also makes me think that if that feels like simp energy in your mind, the difference is going to be that the more safety that you can provide, safety is different than nice guy energy.
Ooh, yeah, that.
Providing safety is masculine across the board.
Mm-hmm.
Nice guy energy, and what was it we were talking about earlier?
We were saying non-threatening.
Non-threatening energy, yes.
Okay. Versus protector energy.
Protector energy and non-threatening energy, very different. Mm-hmm. There's a whole episode on that. If this is something that you're like, yeah, but she's going to think that I'm in the friend zone, something. I don't know where your brain goes with that, but if that's where that goes, mm-hmm. we have a whole episode on that. I would definitely encourage you to check that out and let us know your thoughts on that because that might land differently. But non-threatening and protector energy are vastly different in the same way that wounded masculine paradigm and empowered masculine paradigm are like two different planets. They're not the same. They don't overlap. You are really able to step into one or the other. And even if you're doing the same behavior, the energy quality is going to express differently mm-hmm. depending on where you're at with that.
Well said.
Mm-hmm.
Well said.
Mm-hmm.
That episode is gold. If you've ever wondered about the nice guy and I don't want to be a nice guy, I don't want to be a simp, I still want to be attracted, that is the episode to clarify it for you.
Yep.
Because there is elements of the nice guy not being attractive that are true. And when you understand what a protector feels like, that's going to put it all into perspective.
Yes. Because at the end of the day, we want to be with people that want to be nice to us.
Mm-hmm. And we also want relationships where we're attracted. That's a requirement.
We want relationships where we feel attracted to them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And we feel attractive, and that's okay.
Very okay.
Some would say necessary.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to add?
No, I feel like that was good.
If you have questions, comments, feedback on this thing, please, Building Bree Coaching is my Instagram. Courtney Shand?
_Shand.
Courtney _Shand. What's wrong with me? I'm out of practice.
Yeah, I gotta
Courtney
do this more often.
_Shand. You can DM us. We would love to do a Q&A episode. Yes. We would share it anonymously, but if you want to put your questions in, especially on YouTube, we're noticing we have a lot more men coming forward and commenting. We love this. So ask your questions if you want. Let us know we can use it on the episode. We would gladly start unpacking those. Our TikTok, For the Love of Men podcast. On Instagram, we're at the For the Love of Men podcast. Sidebar, we did just get For the Love of Men podcast trademarked, which
That
we're
we
really
did.
excited about. My personal TikTok is at Building Bree. I post on there multiple times a day. So if you want more content from me, that's the place to find me.
Very active on there.
And Courtney underscore Shan again?
Yeah, I'm Courtney underscore Shan across the board.
Yeah.
All the platforms is where I'm at. I love that. If this is something that you're exploring and you want some more content that's a little bit more elevated and skillful than the content on protector versus non-threatening, wounded masculine versus empowered masculine, some of those earlier episodes are gold. If this is something you're wrestling with, those are going to be gold just to differentiate in your mind, because you will have to understand that you're not your power is not being stripped of you all at once. It is a conscious moving in a direction, not just like being dead in the water sort of thing. Those would be great places to check. And then how to create safety, what your female partner is asking for and how to provide it. That masterclass, guys,
it's king energy.
we went in depth into how to actually provide the emotional safety that she is looking for that will make you like next level partner material. Not to be used manipulatively, but if you are genuinely interested in supporting the women in your life in a more king energy, in that provider energy, that's the place to go.
Yes.
We have some other ones too, but that would be where I would recommend.
Amazing.
Yeah.
We'll see you on the next show.